Hi, this is Rabbi Moshe Rothschild from the Israel Alliance, bringing you summary of the news from Israel for the week ending Thursday, October 22nd. So our first story, um, in line with standard Israeli practice, they have a policy of ambiguity. Israel neither denied nor confirmed their involvement in airstrikes in southern Syria, which took place early on Wednesday. The Syrian state news agency reported that missiles hit two Syrian army sites and a Hezbollah vehicle, which were allegedly used for intelligence gathering near the Israeli border at the Golan Heights. Um, the uh, the Iron Dome this week shot down rockets from Gaza just hours after terror tunnels were discovered. Israel uncovered about 20 tunnels since 2014, which Hamas, the Islamic terror group who's the ruling authority in Gaza, have been digging to try to infiltrate and commit acts of terror into Israel. And the latest announcement this week that they had uncovered more tunnels led to the Israeli action of trying to destroy the tunnel and got a response from Gaza as they started to fire rockets into Israel, and the Iron Dome intercepted them. More good news this week: the Israel and the United Arab Emirates announced, and the US, sorry, announced a $3 billion regional development fund, which was established in order to enhance the prosperity of both Israel and the United Arab Emirates. They're trying to raise $3 billion in private investments for a new fund called the Abraham Fund. Excellent name. Ilan Carr, who's the United States envoy, the anti-Semitic czar. Not that he's an anti-Semite, meaning he's supposed to be monitoring anti-Semitism. Reported that there's been 1.7 million anti-Semitic posts on Facebook and Twitter so far in the first 8 months of 2020. I have to tell you that I've been the victim of many of those attacks. On our Facebook page, we were constantly getting anti-Semites posting all kinds of things. The Israeli corona vaccine called BriLife will start human testing at the end of this month. The Israeli vaccine developer, the Israel Institute for Biological Research, named their potential life-saving vaccine BriLife, which is a combination of the Hebrew word briut and Israel's domain name il and the word life. So BriLife. So BR for briut, IL for Israel, L, and then life for obviously life. The United States is going to remove Sudan from the terror list, from a state that sponsors terror, in order to encourage their first steps to normalization with Israel, another Arab state. Incredible. Donald Trump, the US president, announced on Monday that the United States will remove Sudan from their list of state sponsors of terrorism. And he tweeted, "Great news. The new government of Sudan, which is making great progress, agreed to pay $335 million to US terror victims and families. Once deposited, I will lift Sudan from the state sponsors of terrorism list. At long last, justice for the American people and big step for Sudan. And of course, this is going to lead, please God, to a normalization with Israel and Sudan." This week, in a controversial move, the Hadassah Hospital accepted Saeb Erekat, who's a longtime Palestinian negotiator and virile hater of Israel, and they agreed to accept him into an Israeli hospital for treatment for corona. He has a very serious case. He's on the doorstep of death, and we don't know if he's going to make it, but Israel decided to accept him into the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, which has been a controversial move. Netanyahu hailed this week as giant steps, and we signed an agreement with Bahrain called it was a memorandum which contained 7 agreements, and it's another step towards peace with Bahrain. The Palestinians were enraged as Emiratis, representatives of the United Arab Emirates, came to visit the Al Aqsa Mosque, which, of course, is located on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And the Palestinians were not pleased with the visit of the United Arab Emirate delegation. In Israel, the first Israeli hospital to deploy drones to save lives occurred this week. The Ziv Medical Center in Tzfat will become the first hospital in Israel to use drones to transport medical equipment, drugs, blood, and corona tests from the hospital and to it. This week, Israel's cautiously beginning to roll back our 3 weeks of lockdown. Some schools will open this week for kids up to age 6. And finally, 70% of Arabs in a poll say that recognition of Israel is likely, regardless of the Palestinians. This is incredible news. And we are hoping that more and more Arab states will jump on board this true and legitimate peace process happening here in Israel and the Middle East. So, folks, wishing you a wonderful weekend or a Shabbat, whatever you call it, a wonderful Sabbath. If you have not donated to our campaign to help those who are suffering from COVID, go into this email, hit the donate button. We could use more help, more partners, and we are distributing those funds here in Israel. Blessings from the Holy Land. All the best.